Welcome to the Mystic Fool's Journey podcast. I'm Anna, and this is Ruth.
Howdy.
And this is an occult history podcast. Today we're taking an even deeper dive into amulets and talisman. Let's get into it.
Let's do it up. Last week we chatted a bit about the distinctions between amulets and talismans, and also gave some historical background to each. And to sum it up, we learned that amulets just kind of work on their own, doing their own thing with built-in intrinsic power sort of thing. And talismans, on the flip side, get a boost from some human magic action. People do their mystical thing with a ritual or something to give an object the power. And thanks to our dude, our homie Pliny the Elder, and the natural histories he wrote, Pliny the Elder is just a boss name, that's for sure. We have a lot of info on how common they actually were, and it seems like they were actually pretty darn common among all kinds of folks back in the day. And there were even full-on stores that sold amulets and talismans for specific things. So Amazon could just never.
Amazon couldn't, but in the early days of Etsy could. My friends and I, just side note, found a shop selling things like vials of squirrel's blood and yeah, it was one of those early days of Etsy where you could click the randomize button and it'd just send you to a shop, and there was some weird stuff. It was not regulated as far as I could tell.
That's crazy. Man, Wild West of Etsy.
Yeah, pretty much.
So this week I wanted to learn a little bit more about how these objects were actually crafted, because Pliny really laid out the whole spectrum of objects that could be used. And while it's fairly easy to pee in a shoe and call it an amulet, obtaining something like basilisk blood might be a bit harder.
Honestly, it's for the best that most people don't believe that their urine is intrinsically magical, because we'd have a really big sanitation problem on our hands.
The key word is most people.
Most
people don't believe that their urine is magical.
I am certain there's someone who has done this, probably
I'm sure there
yesterday.
Was an Etsy store about it.
Definitely an Etsy store about it.
And also I wanted to know, what's the deal with astrology? And why is it so intrinsically connected to amulets and talismans? These are the questions that I'd like answered, and the quest we shall embark on together.
Let us embark. We're going on an adventure.
So when it comes to crafting an amulet, we need to recognize that there are multiple different levels on the road from amulet to talisman. So let's go on a little road trip here. First, let's do simple amulets. So these simple charms basically work because tradition says that they're special. Depending on where they come from, they're believed to have all sorts of powers. As time went on, people started lumping them together into one big category, especially from way back in the ancient times to even the Middle Ages. Is that a form of synchronization? Can objects be synchronized?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I would argue yes, because, you're adopting things from one religion into another one because they have similarities. You're just this is close enough.
Yeah, right.
I'm not technically an academic scholar on this. I just read a lot.
Oh, man. Anna's not an academic scholar? What are we doing this podcast for?
Oh, who knew? Yeah, I don't know. Where's the pro in here? It's not me.
These basic charms are made up of just one thing, whether it's an animal part, a plant, or a rock even. And folks like to think that they have tons of power. But if you take a closer look, you'll notice these powers often have something in common. For instance, you might use the same thing for sicknesses and curses and demons. And sometimes you wonder, does the specific animal part actually matter? Or is it just the whole animal in general? Because, the beaks of different birds or the hides of various animals seem to have the same magical vibes.
Yeah, I think after reading about all these kinds of ingredients from all the historical sources, I think it's safe to say that nothing is set in stone. Pun intended.
No.
Hey. Oh boy, feeling spicy today. I feel and maybe it's just me, that a lot of people are searching for that definitive ultimate source of knowledge where you can just point to a recipe and be this is the no fail, always works recipe for wealth and love. Yeah, I just feel a lot of people are looking for that, and it's just not gonna happen.
No,
we're not gonna get that. we have a lot of records about amulets and talisman, and they've all got different ingredients for the same thing or ingredients that have multiple uses. And then, of course, you have different accounts across different areas of the world where it's like, cool, well, that place didn't even have cedar trees, so do they even care? Like, they don't,
Right.
Like, it wasn't even an option. They didn't know, like, cedar existed or sage existed or amethyst. So, it's one of those things. You're just like, cool. And we'll see some of that because, like, we've got another book coming up that's not Greek, surprisingly.
Surprise!
So yeah, it's one of those things where like there's not a catch-all. Like some things did multiple things because that's all everybody had, and some people had like individual ingredients for every little option, like knife wounds versus lightning wounds versus the lightning and the knife wounds. There were a lot.
I mean, truly, it makes you think.
Yeah, it really does. So what kind of amulets caught your specific attention, Ruth?
Okay, so in the book we read, I guess it's called The High Magic of Amulets and Talismans. Big ups to that book. But it gave us a lot of fun examples from the magical texts of history, which is my favorite place to go to. So here's one. If you nail the hide of a seal to the prow or mast of a ship, lightning shall never strike it. If you hang its heart from the mast, it shall never sink.
That's some powerful stuff.
I know, those seals, man, who knew? So then there's hung in front of doors, hyena skin will prevent all betrayal. Are hyenas like more prevalent in Greece than I
That's
knew?
a great question, and it clearly there were some things I didn't learn in like high school geography. Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm like, where did this one come from? Like, are hyenas a thing in that region? I'd have to Google it.
We would,
but I'm not.
We're not. This one's my favorite though. To heal a lunatic, it is necessary at the waning of the moon, when Taurus or Scorpio is in its first decan, to wrap a buttercup in clean linen and hang it around the afflicted individual's neck.
That's the least violent of the options we've heard so far.
I know. To heal a lunatic, just give them a buttercup. That's kind of cute.
Just put a little flower and some cloth and hang it around their neck. Also, what defines lunatic? Is this just like a person throwing a tantrum? Or
I don't know. I think we covered that in our Witches in Hysteria series, so go check that out.
Yeah, go check that out. That makes a lot more sense.
And then I think another really, really good example of simple amulets, especially nowadays, is crystals. I think it's totally in vogue these days to keep like specific crystals around for specific reasons. But like, just a heads up, if you just have the raw rock, then it's a simple amulet. But if you make it into like a ring or jewelry or home decor, then it is a talisman.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, kind of fun.
Clearly, I have a lot of amulets lying around.
Oh, there you go.
I have so many rocks. I just like rocks. But
I love rocks, man. Finding rocks is like my favorite thing to do in life.
I just want to collect.
There was one TikTok I saw recently of a person who, like, for their birthday this year, they got all their friends to bring them rocks, and then she had a competition on the rocks and ranked them.
Oh, ouch.
I know, it was pretty cool. I thought that was a great idea for a party. So the next level is compound amulets. And compound amulets, they're like a mix of just two things. Either two of the same deal, like stones, or two different things, like an animal hide and a stone. And the magician's game here is to level up the power by blending the virtues of a bunch of ingredients or materials. Usually they're hooking up with a common virtue shared by both stones, or rolling with a stone and its metal sidekick. The lowdown on this kind of comes from the Kyrenides, a compilation of magico-medical texts from the 4th century. So let me hit you with another few examples, or just one. We'll just do one. So if one places the hide of a seal in a house or a ship, or if one wears it, no misfortune shall befall its bearer, because it turns aside thunder, dangers, curses, ferocious beasts, demons, brigands?
Brigands.
Who knows? Brigands? I'm not sure what that is.
It's like thieves, I think.
No.
You know, people who want to hurt you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And any just like general nighttime encounters, unknown what that entails.
All of them?
Right? But then here's the second material. It helps to have the sea stone known as coral with it. So that's blending too. With the seal hide, you get all these things. And then if you have coral around, it just kind of boosts it as well.
So these could be like pretty crude. There's not a lot, like you don't have to put a lot of effort into making or having an amulet. It's just
like wear the seal hide or something and then hold the coral in your pocket. I don't know what specifically needs to happen, but it's pretty chill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently they thought like coral and seal skin are like natural lightning stoppers on their own, like back in the day. I don't think there's any science to support that.
No.
But put them together and boom, you've got yourself a pretty slick lightning rod. And side note, again, so many recipes about lightning objects, anti-lightning.
Yeah, it was like the knife wounds in the first episode. You're like, there's a lot here about lightning and knife wounds. So I'm wondering, knife wounds made a little more sense when you're like, cool, people, it was kind of wild back then. And like, when guns weren't like a thing that was normalized. That's weird to say out loud.
Right.
Like knife wounds were the thing. Like a thief in the night might pull a knife on you that, you go to sword fight someone. But like lightning, was it just like more of a common problem or was it just like they're more scared of it because they didn't understand it? So like they thought it was going to be like a big deal. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to, we'll leave that to the historians to school us.
Yeah. It's like, why is lightning such a focus? But yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So then we have the next level, which is procuring amulets. And this is where it gets like a little bit tricky about maintaining the boundaries of amulet versus talisman. A core feature of talisman is obtaining things. And similarly, procuring amulets also hook you up with like blessings or perks or whatever. And you might be thinking, Ruth, WTF, that sounds like a talisman, what's the diff? Well, they are similar, but talismans, a really crucial part of it is that you need to have an element of ritual to go along with it. And amulets never have a ritual that go along with it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, that is definitely like, that makes it way more simple. In like reading all of these things, you're like, okay, but like some of these all sound the same. Like, what's the difference? Because there were some examples too of complex amulets where it's like you could carve a symbol into the stone to add to the power, and then you'd put it on a necklace, and you're like, well, this is getting really close to a talisman, but it wasn't, because there was no ritual, there's no like incantations or cleansing or matching up with the stars. So you could literally just make an amulet today. It doesn't, maybe it takes like the magical wind out of the sails to hear that, but like literally if you and your beliefs believe that something has intrinsic power, you've already got an amulet. Like the rocks, or you're carrying around rosemary, or you put some herbs in a vial and make it a necklace. Look at you. You've done an amulet. You can do that.
Oh no, my magical wind and my magical sails.
My magical wind is gone. It shouldn't have been this simple. It is. It's that simple.
Yeah, and so it's pretty normal for an amulet to have like more than one gig, even if it's just made of one thing. Just because, seal skins, anti-lightning, anti-brigands, nighttime encounters.
The nighttime encounters. I need it.
I know. And on top of that, its other effects might score some like extra blessings for the owner. And here's a pretty good example of an amulet that not only protects, but also procures. So Hyacinth, it protects travelers and roads. It is a good amulet against pestilences, serpents, and poison. And it makes him who wears it pleasing to God and men alike.
Yeah, Hyacinth is really pulling some weight here. And it kind of, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of makes God sound a little shallow. Like the idea that, or gullible, like all I gotta do is carry around some of these flowers, and he's like, wow, she's so cool. Oh my God. Have you seen how cool this chick is? She's got Hyacinth.
Dude, seriously. Try this crazy tip for your next job interview.
I know, right? Put some hyacinth in your left pocket.
And finally, we have complex amulets. And that is just like an amulet that uses as many different materials that you want. And usually includes carvings and engravings as well. So here's a really long example of a complex amulet. If a stone is topped with the image of a bearded man with a long face and curved eyebrows, seated on a plow between two bulls, holding a knife in one hand and wearing the head of a man and the head of a fox around his neck, this stone will be useful for plantings and for all crops, for finding treasure, and for fighting. It will transform enemies into allies and heal many diseases. It also helps epileptics.
Wait, but we're not done.
And if a child wears it around his neck, the stone will ward off all fears and protect him from the torments of evil spirits. And if a sick person wears it, he will recover his health. In order for the stone to have even greater power, it should be set in an iron ring that is twice its weight.
Okay, I mean, come on. Is this this does sound like the Swiss Army knife of amulets. It's also, that is a really complicated image to carve, it sounds like, on a stone.
Right?
I'm sure all of those things, meant something too. It's all symbolism. I'm not really sure what bearded man represents, but then, he's also wearing heads around his neck of a fox and another man. That seems weird.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. I'm not sure how they got all that into a stone, but whatever.
It's a pretty big stone. I'm like, how big is this rock that we're
right? If a child
about?
Can wear it around his neck, then it must be pretty small.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They had more time back then. That's all I've learned from this.
Truly,
more time to dedicate to these things.
They really had much more time. Nowadays, we just have TikTok. So with these types of amulets, you might bring astrology into the mix, indicating a move from just an amulet to more of a talisman vibe. It's like everything has to be whipped up at this specific moment when the stars are all aligned and doing their thing for it to work its magic. So let's dive into what goes down while crafting a talisman to really draw this whole thing together. So there's this thing called the Picatrix, which is like a translation of a bunch of Arabic magic texts. And it keeps hammering home the knowledge a magician needs to draw up talismans. And it's got this list of must-have skills like being a boss at astronomy, math, music, and more. This just sounds like a guide to all the hobbies you need to have as a magician.
Yeah, basically.
But the main deal here is that the magician shouldn't be messing around with anything else at the time. The dude's got to be all in on this talisman game. Mind, heart, smarts, and everything. Crafting one of these takes serious brain power and focus to lock in those planetary spirits into an object. I feel like these magicians are Andrew Huberman type of guys.
Yeah, this is the type of guy. Yeah, that seems right. Before we actually had psychology and sciences, that's exactly who would have been doing this and whatever the equivalent of a podcast and YouTube channel is. He's in the town square, at an altar, all right, now to do it. Step one.
Exactly. Okay, so here's why we have to do all of that. You might be thinking, why? Why does everything have to be lined up? Why? So in the magical realm, it's all about these occult correspondences, which are called the chains of sympathy. Yes, and basically the chains of sympathy says that the stars and planets have already dispersed their energies into every single thing on Earth. Literally, you name it, it has a corresponding energy from a planet that had its energy dispersed into it. So Earth, rocks, plants, animals, even our own bodies. There's even colors, scents, smells. It's crazy. And so I think it was Plato times when they decided all this or something like
Probably, that makes sense. Someone decided to write it all down and figure it out.
Yeah, it was basically their job to come up with this. And it's all just based off of vibes. There was no science behind it.
It was 100% aesthetics.
Right? So when you're looking to make something happen with a talisman, you got to round up these scattered powers and bring them together. Sort of grouping up what based on what vibes well together sort of thing. So that's how we figure out what goes into creating an amulet.
like Celestial Blues Brothers is what I thought of, because it was like, yeah, we're getting the band back together across time and space. We got to
Literally.
draw all of our astrology bros together to make this happen. You're like, you're the rallying team is what's happening. You're the person that's going to get the band back together so we can make this talisman.
Yeah, exactly. And so making a talisman is basically about getting a planetary spirit to vibe with an object and pump it with its mojo. And to pull in the spirit, the person doing it needs to get the lowdown on the planet's vibe because, like, you know, it's ultimately the spirit that they're calling down. So they got to know the color, taste, smell, that's all linked to the planet's style. So the gear they wear and the scents they use have to match. And same deal with, like, what's going on the inside. Like, the person's got to munch on, like, specific foods to make the whole thing click, too. And it's, like, a whole coordinated effort to get the spirit in sync with the object. Like, there's even, like, specific times, some planets, they're like, you have to fast for 7 days before creating this talisman sort of thing.
Yeah, it was, like, lots of timing where they're like, cool, you need to fast for this many days, but you need to make sure your fast ends on the day that the planet is ruling, so that way you can make your talisman on that day. Yeah, it's a lot. And, like, honestly, the wardrobe alone needed to cover all of the planets, deacons, and zodiac signs. It's just too much. They had like a few snippets of colors and things. And also, they didn't have all the planets back then. Like, they hadn't found Pluto yet. And they hadn't found, so it's like the lists, they're missing a couple things.
Yeah.
It's not like we even have a complete list, but it'd be like, Saturn, wear something black and woolly. Or like Mars, you know, wear reds, oranges, golds, like, you know, and then they have like a list of colors and like whether or not it should be woolly or silky. Yeah. So like, it's just a lot. Like, if you love accessories, this is for you, because making talisman will give you the excuse to get all the accessories.
Yeah. It's so funny. This whole thing, it reminds me, like, I don't remember what it's called, but they did this thing a long time ago when like they did a study on different words and what like their physical shape would be.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the word bubble is like very rounded and has lots of rounds.
It's
and
like the
everybody
bebop and meat morph or something. Yeah,
exactly. And then like Kiki is like you know, very
Kiki
jagged.
Yeah,
like,
I think
that's the whole thing.
Yes, you remember the proper names. You can actually Google this. It's called the Booba Kiki effect. Because they would like put these two shapes out there and they'd be like, cool, if these shapes had a name, and they would be like, you know, you have these two names, Booba and Kiki, like, how do you match them up? And almost always everyone puts Kiki with the pointy shape and Booba with the rounded happy shape, and it's like this mental association between sounds and shapes.
Yeah, I just imagine like all of these Roman, Greek, you know, mind master guys sitting around and they're like, okay, we all agree that Mars is like gold, right?
He's like powerful. He sounds strong.
Yeah, like write that down.
Yeah, do that. That's probably literally how it happened. It probably also like helped that like if they had gods associated with the planets, you know, Mars is like war. Of course he's going to be fiery and red, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's literally what happened. It's in my head.
You're right. Okay, so the magician's got to be on top of all these little teeny tiny details when it comes to the material he's using for the talisman. No clashes allowed between the material's nature and the spirit getting into the mix. And they're using this sympathy vibe to pick up the right material, you know, connecting with like natural effects. And to pull this off, according to the Picatrix, you gotta be a master of all this cosmos stuff, understanding the lowdown on animals, planets, minerals, you know, stars, zodiac signs, covering different like Earth spots. I feel like I'm just like saying words here. Earth stops and blah, blah, blah. So long story short, you need to be an astronomy whiz, knowing the planets' moves, their high points, low points, where the moon's houses are, and the whole deal about Earth's regions. Water, soil, weather, animals, the whole shebang. So the magician's just gotta be like checking when the planet in question is in its sweet spot in the zodiac and making sure its vibes aren't clashing with like some other celestial body that's not feeling its groove. So, you know, like super easy peas, right?
So chill.
So I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite recipes for a cursed talisman. It includes taking a decapitated man's head, his spleen, his heart, his liver, plus all animal heads, oil, fire, and henbane? I don't know. But you do something with all that and you get a curse.
That's it, dude. You know what? You figure it out. Apparently, we didn't have like a recipe to follow. It's just here's a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it also brings into question, like, this is all assuming that you follow, I think, the Hellenistic zodiac, which is different, by the way, from our modern day zodiac. Things have changed. It's just like modern day zodiac, Western astrology came from Hellenistic astrology for the most part.
Cool.
But there's other astrologies, like there's Hindu astrology and Chinese astrology and Babylonian astrology. So it's just, these are also assuming that you follow this particular set of astrology practices. We won't get into that because, like, the book didn't talk about how to reconcile that particular thing. Just so you know, while the texts that we read have all these, like, super intense rituals to make talisman, you know, and we talked about, like, the weeks of fasting, fear not, you can make talisman without having to follow all the crusty old recipes. I mean, if you want to follow them, that's fine. I can't help you with the decapitated heads. Maybe we don't touch that one, I guess, you know.
Yeah, maybe not.
But, you know, it kind of all depends on what you specifically believe. So, like, if you only recognize the Picatrix as the way to make a talisman, then, like, we can't help you here. But if you're still with me and you're like, oh, I can make my own shit, well, there's, like, a basic structure to most of these things that you've probably gathered. So we'll just, like, do a quick rundown. Step 1, what do you want this thing to do? Figure it out. Write that down. Okay, great. Nice. So what form do you want it to take? Like, you're going to have to carry this thing around, right? This is, like, the creative part. You want to make a bracelet? You want to make, like, a keychain? Like, do you just want to carry around a thing in your pocket? That's great. You can do that. You know, just figure it out. What do you want it to do? And what do you want it to look like in its final form? And then step 2, materials. Gather your materials. Based on your beliefs and intention for this talisman, pick out the things that align with it. We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about colors, fabrics, smells, herbs. And I don't want to encourage you to do animal things, but if you somehow have
ethically sourced animal things.
Like if your cat's whiskers, which do naturally fall out, you've got a bottle of those lying around, great, go for it. Otherwise, I'm not going to encourage you to use a living thing aside from maybe a plant.
Sure.
But yeah, so gather your materials. This is going to be based on what you believe and the whole intention behind it. An easy example, wealth. A lot of people in Western society, you know, associate things that are green and gold with wealth. So, you know, get you some basil. Get you a piece of cloth that's colored green. Or,
nice.
you know, that kind of stuff. You can literally, like, make this up based on what your intention is. The point is your intention is what makes it a talisman and makes it powerful. So, yeah, we did, like, an example. You know, you could do the necklace thing. What color is the cord that you put the stone on? We got examples there. Or if you want to get fancy and buy, like, charms that are the shape of certain symbols, do that. Great. So you've got your materials, you have your intention, and then the last step, this is the ritual part. And you can make it up.
Like, fun!
This is probably more chaos magic than anything else, but this is the consecration part, because this is the part that can be super involved depending on what you want to do and what you believe in. So, you know, you could set up, like, a little space undisturbed with your materials. You could light candles that are specific color or scent. If you've got a deity you're petitioning, you know, you do your little incantation or meditation or prayer. You can burn some incense. So, you know, you're setting the vibe. This is literally set the vibe, set the tone. You can do the same thing with astrology. If you want it to line up with, like, a specific day because it aligns with a certain planet, do that. Or if you're into numerology and you're like, I love 1111, great. You got to wait till November 11th to do that. So do that. But basically, you know, you combine all these things that you believe have symbolic and or real intrinsic power together, and then you make your talisman. And you visualize and you meditate on its purpose while you're making it. Don't get distracted. Don't doom scroll. Because then TikTok's going to get into your talisman, and we don't want that.
No, we do not.
You don't want, like, ads popping up in the middle of your talisman. Like, come on.
Right, truly.
Could you imagine walking around and your necklace is like, oh, but have you learned these 5 easy tricks for how to be cooler?
It's only a matter of time when Apple starts doing that to our watches and all that.
It's true.
This
we're
does make
there.
me think, though, seeing these steps laid out, could I roll, like, the fattest doobie with the intention of making money and just, like, have it stay around.
There's a lot of people that do stuff like that. So some of it is, it's like, so there's a lot of like rituals that involve food items, because food is often associated with like abundance. So rice is a really common one. And so people will set an intention. They'll maybe like put like rice and basil in a container. Maybe they'll like light candles near it. And then they'll go and cook it later and eat it. Or they'll like offer it back to nature and like scatter it for the birds. Actually, you're not supposed to feed rice to birds, but that's a different story. But yeah, you get the idea. So yes, you could totally roll a fat doobie with the intention of making some sick cash money and smoke it and meditate.
Well, thanks for tuning in.
I hope that gave you some ideas. I hope you guys feel empowered to make your own talisman and amulets now.
Yeah. Like and subscribe. Follow us on all socials. Our handles are Sweet Dead Think and Mystic Fool Tarot on all platforms. We need you to share this with your friends.
Cue Sarah McLaughlin's I Will Remember You in the background.
Yep. And all that jazz. See you later.
Bye.